Week 4 matchup when the Oakland Raiders travel well past Las Vegas and land in Indianapolis, Indiana, for their Week 4 matchup against the Colts. 1 o'clock start. You are not hearing this from the future. This is not a Week 8 preview of Oakland Raiders versus Houston Texans, although I am the Houston Texans superfan James, joined by Monty, our Oakland Raiders superfan. Monty, how are things today for you?
Battle of the Superfans. Really good, man. I can't believe that Pod was interested enough to have us back. This might be the last time I get to do one of these, so it's not too shabby. I'll take it.
You'll take what you can get. So clearly, repping in for the once and former Colts superfan Dan here, there will not be a huge pro-Colts angle on this. Unfortunately, though, the Colts do come in as a division leader, and as a rather surprising stat, by DVOA, they're actually the sixth best offense in the NFL right now. Who would have thought that losing Andrew Luck would have, resulted in something like this? Jacoby Brissett proving himself to be more than competent. 7 TD passes, 1 interception. Has not had the toughest of schedules so far. Monty, what are you thinking going in? Probably prior to this season, you had this scheduled as a good matchup. Then Andrew Luck went out, and you probably had this scheduled as a great matchup. But the times have changed a bit.
Yeah, I mean, after all those wins the Colts rattled off last year to make the playoffs and just the way their offensive line was playing, I actually had Darius Leonard, that linebacker in an independent defensive player fantasy league. So I was actually chalked this up to a pretty easy win for the Colts going into it. When Andrew Luck decided to retire, I kind of figured it might be a little bit closer to a pick'em game, but just feels like that offensive line is really playing, kind of one of the premier units in the NFL right now. And I just don't see any way that the Raiders defensive line is going to be able to put any kind of pressure on Jacoby Brissett in order to slow him down.
The one thing that may slow Jacoby Brissett down, though, is T.Y. Hilton appearing on the injury list with an aggravated quad. My dislike of T.Y. goes deep in this podcast. However, he usually is only a good threat against the Texans. I think last year something like 30% of his yards came in the 2 games against the Texans, and then he put up like another 200 yards in the playoff game. So you may not have to worry too much about him. But as you said, I don't really think your guys' D-line there is going to be enough to penetrate the suddenly stout Colts offensive line that, the likes of which Andrew Luck could only dream of.
I do think T.Y. Hilton is like one of those true game time decisions. He was banged up going into last week. He tried to gut it out after he got a touchdown, then he left the game. So, I mean, I would think if you're, the Indianapolis Brass, you might want to, protect him for a little bit further on down the season. And since the lowly Raiders are coming into town, they might be able to, try to steal this one without bringing T.Y. out there, which does make for a little bit better story for the defensive backs of Oakland. Obviously, the defense is not the Raiders' strong suit. They actually don't really have a strong suit at this point. But without T.Y. Hilton out there, I think that'll definitely change the way that Gunther will be able to call his defenses. And, I think that, it's 6.5 is the point spread that I'm seeing on the internet right now. I think the Raiders should be able to keep it closer than that, but I've lost bets before trying to cover the spread with this team.
Yeah, that's right at about probably the margin. I mean, it seems like a reasonable margin. Going back to both your IDP league and keeping with the injury theme, Darius Leonard popped up on the injury report as well. So you might have that going for you. I know after the receiver who must not be named left the team, there was a lot of buzz around Tyrell Williams, House Tyrell, for the Game of Thrones fans. And then it just seems like your guys' running back that Gruden insisted on an offensive rookie of the year candidate just can't seem to get going. Do you see either of those guys, benefiting here?
Yeah, a couple thoughts there. I think Terrell Williams is a good complementary piece. He's never going to be, one of those elite top wide receivers. So he definitely looked a lot better when you had someone like Antonio Brown demanding a double coverage. So I watched, a lot of those plays from against the Vikings, and your stat hounds are going to look and say, Derek Carr never throws it down the field. He's too conservative. He's never taken any shots. But the Vikings defense the Raiders were not able to win any one-on-one matchups, and they just kind of took Terrell Williams out of the game. I know he got a touchdown there, but it was garbage time. That game, the score was a lot closer than that game was. It was never really close in hand. The only person who's really starting to step up is that Darren Waller, the tight end. He's becoming a bit of a matchup problem for opposing teams. Now, the last couple games the Raiders have been in, they've been kind of getting blown out, so I'd really like to see a closer game to see if he can still do that. And as far as the Rookie of the Year candidate, Josh Jacobs, going into the Kansas City game, he actually he had like 4 IV bags during the course of that game. He's been like seriously has the flu or something, because I think the report I saw was he lost 10 pounds throughout the last couple weeks as he's trying to get over this illness. So in the Kansas City game, he obviously played. They had him on IV bags to get through it. And then last week, the game kind of got away with him. So they kind of used, the DeAndre Washington, Jalen Richard combo. So probably going into this week, he's probably more healthy than he has been in the last 2 weeks, but he's certainly not 100%. But I mean, with some of the injuries the Colts have, I think that this Raiders offense should be able to move the ball a little bit. I mean, they played 3 good quarters against the Kansas City Chiefs. They played a pretty good game against Denver. And with all of the injuries on the Colts line, I think the Raiders might be able to make this a little bit closer than what you would think of on paper, just strictly due to the injuries on the Indianapolis side of the ball. But, I guess we will see.
Yeah, perfectly fair there. The Colts really don't have a great defense so far. Going back to DVOA, I believe they're like 25th. So, I mean, them losing their 1 or 2 good defensive players, the bottom, they're already pretty close to the bottom. I hope for the entertainment's sake and for the hatred of the division rival goes, I hope you're right that you guys are going to be able to put some points up and steal one out in Indy. Unfortunately, I don't necessarily see that one happening. So with that, Monty, what's your score prediction on this one? And, you already brought up the line being 6.5. What are you hoping for here?
Boy, I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I would like to see a few more points on the board. So the Raiders, obviously lost Antonio Brown. They just cut Ryan Grant. I don't know if you remember that guy's name at all. I think the Colts actually signed him and then did some dastardly deeds and cut him once they were able to sign somebody else or something. But he has been non-existent. So J.J. Nelson from the Cardinals is healthy again. The Hard Knock superstar Keelan Doss that Pod was in love with is on the team. The Raiders just don't have that many offensive weapons. So we're really going to see. One question that I had for you, and now, James, I'm never going to be confused with an intelligent person or a smart person, but as a layman watching the game, when I see teams running people in motion and not even that misdirection stuff that Andy Reid and McVay are doing, just to run a receiver in motion to see how the defense reacts, kind of tips off your quarterback whether or not someone is playing zone or man-to-man, or it kind of gives you an idea of where you might want to be able to attack the defense. And when the Raiders were getting their butts kicked in Minnesota, it just looked to me like John Gruden was just lining his guys up there, standing them completely still, snapping the ball, and then just getting pummeled and then having to punt. Now, I'm not the smartest guy you're ever going to meet, but doesn't that seem like a terrible plan?
It seems not great. That's for sure. I see a lot of that in Houston as well. It's almost like these coaches have something in common.
Hubris or just arrogance?
That's probably part of it. If you have such faith in your system, in your quarterback, that you think that they can just deal with it, and it's best to line up your guys against theirs and see where it goes. If you want to make a stretch for a counter argument, I guess you can say, as you mentioned, just how many wide receivers you've put into the system. It's not like it's the most advanced thing to put a guy in motion, but if they haven't been in the system that long, how many route combinations do they know? And then on top of that, maybe there's some old school fear that, by putting a guy in motion, we're getting into that Princess Bride territory here of, well, they know I'm going to put him in motion, so I'm not going to put him in motion and throw them off their game and, try and get into that weird three-dimensional chess.
Advantage defense, at least it has been thus far into the season. I don't know. It just struck me as kind of odd as I was rewatching that game. If I had to predict this game, I think it's going to be like 20-17. What I'd like it to be is 20-17, where the Raiders steal a win that I didn't think they were going to get, and I'll just leave it at that. If I had to put money on this, I'd have to say that I'm not going to be able to help you out with your division rivals, but you never know. That's why they play the games.
Exactly right. Unfortunately, I think the Colts, offense is just going to be a bit too much. In one of those fun, I'll be happy no matter which way it turns out things, I'm going to put the Colts as my lock of the week this week. That way, if I lose my eliminator thing, I'm still happy that the Colts lost. But I'm thinking it's going to be more in the 28 to about 14. Colts over the Raiders. It's just not looking great. You can go back to the old West Coast team traveling east, the fact that you have John Gruden coaching, all those negative indicators of things like that.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I'm raising the rest of this glass, and I'm hoping that you are eliminated this week, my friend. Cheers.
Cheers, buddy. Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time.
All right, here we are, week 4 of the NFL season, and the proverbial game of the week, the 3-0 New England Patriots head down to Buffalo to face the 3-0 Buffalo Bills. We're going to talk about the game real quick. This is Rob, the Buffalo Bills superfan. I am joined by Patrick, the Patriots superfan. How you doing today, Patrick?
Man, I find two things hard to believe. One, that Buffalo is down from Foxborough, and two, that it's a game of the week.
Yeah, who would have thunk it? So
I know.
Let's talk about the Patriots first. I haven't seen too much of the Patriots, but I do know how to read box scores. And although they, like the Bills, have not had the hardest schedule in the world, they've demolished all 3 teams that they played. The coach of the Bills even said at a press conference, no one has come close to even touching them so far this year. What are your thoughts going into week 4 about your hometown Patriots?
I mean, they're ripe for letdown, I suppose, when you put it that way. They have played, not only have they not played anybody, they've played a team that is openly tanking to start the year. It's been a horror show watching Patriots games this year. The offense seems to be able to do pretty much whatever they want until they get bored. And then on defense, it is running through a brick wall, but it's not made out of bricks. It's made out of those old fashioned cheese graters that are flat on one side. If you accidentally rub your knuckles against them, you're going to bleed for a week. That's been the Patriots defense. It's rough. So good luck.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Going into this week, I kind of feel like I almost expected the Bills to be 3-0 when you look at their first 3 games. Obviously, on the preseason show that you and me did, we both talked about how we thought the Jets were going to suck, and lo and behold, both of our teams have beat the Jets.
Didn't they have a fan? Didn't they have a fan write into us and complain about how over the top we were with saying how bad that team is and that franchise is? Yeah,
look at that now.
I mean, scoreboard, buddy, scoreboard.
Yeah, they're terrible, and they're going to be terrible until they fire Gay. Spoiler alert. But anyway, enough about them. And the Bills played the Bengals, who at least played a couple teams close. I'll give them that. And the Giants, who this is before Daniel Jones, so they were terrible as well. Bills are kind of different. They made the defense is as good as it's been. They've just kind of been the hallmark with Sean McDermott's team. They have really good defense, and they played well this year for sure. They're sacking the quarterback a lot more than they did the previous 2 years.